And we are live. Hello, everybody out there. Welcome, all you minders. Welcome, all you Marty Owings art fans out there. We're doing another collaborative broadcast, and Marty and I just enjoy getting together and talking about art supplies. So we figured, hey, why not just let everybody else join in and watch and ask a few questions? Oh,
Yeah.
what?
We're still connected?
I am. Hold on a second. I'm hearing an advertisement.
Oh, okay.
That was surprising. I don't know if anybody. Sorry, everyone. All of a sudden, I got ad through my headphones, and I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, I bet I know what that is. When you kick off when you kick it off, that's what happens.
Okay.
So, let me pause the live event here. All right, I'm going to go back to you. Yeah, because I shut off all the other sound sources, because otherwise you get the beeps from Facebook or whatever. So I shut it all down.
I thought that I had, but obviously I hadn't.
Well, yeah, I didn't hear anything on my end, so it must have just been. But
good,
anyway,
good.
Here we are. We're hanging out. We're ready to talk watercolors, and especially pan watercolors.
Yes. So Marty, you were a pan person before I was a pan person. So I'm going to let you introduce your thoughts on pan watercolors, and I don't know how much you even use tube watercolors or tube watercolors on a palette, but talk about it. Whatever you got.
Well, I do use them because I do use tubes, plenty of them, because it's more economical sometimes to just buy a tube of Schmincke because they're expensive. A tube will fill up my pan about 6 or 7 times. And this is a special edition botanical set. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. I know, Steve, you're going to get into this a little bit more detail, but we talk about pans. These are really half pans. Those are just a half pan size pan. And this was a special botanical edition that Schmincke issued through wet paint. And there was only, I think there's 500 in the entire edition. So if you don't have one yet, I was up at wet paint and they said they'll be sold out by the end of the week. So if you don't have one, you should get one.
So they're not going to restock on those.
Well, they just ran 500. And then
okay.
And that's, yeah. I think last time Darren, who's the owner up there, was telling me they ordered like 200 for the last special edition, and they were sold out in like a week or 2. So this time they ordered 500, expecting maybe that'll last a little longer. But they're selling out they're going to be sold out at the end of the week. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about that set, and we're going to talk about tubes because you use tubes primarily. But this is the set I use out in the field every day, and I've shown this on my channel, and I think I might have shown people this last time. Steve, we did our collaboration last time. I showed this set, but this has I think 24, 26 colors in it that I've added, and there's a full pan in there. So if you want a little comparison, that white is a full pan from Schmincke, and these are half pans. Now, somebody mentioned, just a quick say this, somebody mentioned the other day that pans can be in a lot of different sizes, and I've noticed that too. So there's not if I get Russian paints, like the Yarka or the White Knights, the pans are a little different in size. Sometimes they're either deeper or wider. And there's a thing called a quarter pan. Did you know this, Steve?
No, I didn't know about the quarter pan. I did know about the different sizes.
Yeah, you got some there. You want to?
This is Mission Gold.
Okay,
they have their own proprietary pan size.
So that pan won't fit in this case.
No, it's not standard in any way.
Gotcha. Okay.
But what you were showing, the half pan and the
full pan,
full pan, that's pretty standardized, I think.
Yeah, these would be the standard size that you'd get from Germany or the U.S. if you ordered a pan paint. Like if you order American Journey or Da Vinci, you're going to get a pan that's roughly the same size as the Schmincke pans. But hey, before we get too deep into the night, I don't want to forget that Val is moderating our chat room right now.
Yes.
And it's Val's birthday. So I hope everybody wishes her a happy birthday. And
happy birthday, Val, and thanks for doing this on your birthday.
Yeah, that's so cool. And the other thing I wanted to mention was Val has her own awesome YouTube channel called Drawing with Fire. And I'm hoping she'll put a link to that in the chat room, because our goal is to get, for her birthday, is to get her up to 1,000 subscribers. Now she's got like 649 subscribers right now. So everybody that's watching now, or if you're watching this on replay, go to Val's channel. It's called Drawing with Fire, and subscribe to her channel, and you'll be in for an awesome experience. She does a lot of wood burning, but she does some watercoloring as well, because I think she likes to lay her stuff out. I'll let her explain it, but I love her channel. I love her instruction process, and Val's just an awesome person.
Yeah, Marty and I are both subscribed to her channel. She's got some beautiful pyrography, and it's gorgeous. So she deserves, you know, as many subscribers as we can get her, especially on this day, her birthday. So everybody go over there and take a look.
Let's get her to 1,000 before the live event's over, Steve. That would be awesome.
I think so.
So let's talk about Marilyn Garber's special edition Schmincke set, which you've had in your hands for how long have you?
Here's mine. I've had this a week, Marty. So
all right.
I haven't even painted with it yet, but I should say I do have another Schmincke set that I have painted. But now mine has an additional row of colors here that I have added. These are the two rows of colors, the 12 that came in the limited edition set, and a very nice selection of colors. I added some more earthy tones. Here's the cool thing about this limited edition set, and I kind of hate that we're pushing this when nobody can get it, but you know, it's still kind of fun to talk about. She's a botanical artist, Minnesota botanical artist. Now there's a group called I don't know if you remember, Marty, it's something iart.lo. I got it right here. I got it right here.
Yep. I am art. Yep.
iamart.org.
Sure,
what they do is they work with local suppliers like wet paint, and ways to promote you know, the selling of art supplies through local suppliers. And Schmincke, and artists too. And Schmincke, I think, partnered with wet paint to produce this. Is that right, Marty?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, they've done so for the past few special editions. I don't know if this is the 4th or 5th special edition, but they always pick an artist, and it's awesome.
I think it's great. I was real intrigued to go, and that's what you viewers can do. You can go, I'll be putting the links to her website. There was also a nice little YouTube video on her, and she's a classical, I guess you would call it, botanical artist. She does it very much in the scientific style, but I know from a lot of comments that you viewers have made on my channel that there's some of you that are very, very interested in that. And the way she describes it is she draws with paint rather than paint. It's a very dry technique.
And good point. Her name is Marilyn Garber. For anybody who's interested, Marilyn Garber. So, well, like Steve said, he'll put a link. But inside that set, once you open it up, and I want to hear you describe the feeling you had when you saw that come in the mailbox, and it's like a treasure, right? Isn't it like getting a treasure in the mail?
I loved it. I loved it. You know, first of all, it's watercolor paint. You know, and it's like, ooh, it kind of glows. Not really, but and then it's Schmincke. You know, everybody knows Schmincke is the top brand, and as I told you in our last little collaboration, you know, I think if you pick any one of our top 10, you're fine. You know, they're all quality paints.
That's right.
Third, I mean, the term limited edition is just, you know, I mean, that just tackles you and pulls the money right out of your wallet.
Yeah,
you know?
you gotta have it. And you figure that set, which normally retails for around $130 or something, they're selling it for 69 bucks.
I know.
Free shipping.
Yeah, and the fact that it was a palette picked by a professional, or a selection of colors picked by a professional botanical artist, just adds a little to the story. That was genius.
I don't know how well people can see it, but this is an example. This card kit, you got this card too, didn't you, Steve?
Yes, I did.
In the kit. And this is an example of
print.
Yeah, some of Marilyn's work, and it's just I just think it's just a fantastic little. It's just brilliant, and yeah, as you say, it's a print, but it's just kind of indicative of this specialization she has, and she's painted for the Smithsonian, the
her credentials were impressive,
unbelievable, yeah. And you know, like when you meet her, like I've bumped into her at different events, Steve.
Yeah,
it's just like talking to your Aunt Molly or something, you know. It's just completely down to earth. So
very unassuming. Yeah, I'm looking at it here. Brooklyn, member of the Brooklyn Botanical Garden Florilegium Society. She's taught in venues including University of Minnesota, Sherwood Gallery, Royal Horticultural Society in London, Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in Panama City, Panama, and I could read on. I mean, it's a long list. Anyway,
the important thing is she sent us, or she picked her favorite colors, her favorite botanical colors, and included them in this kit. You know what? I'm just, when I'm saying these words, Steve, it's like I'm a QVC salesman. You picked a and right here you can get a limited edition. You know, I feel like it's weird saying it, but it's a pretty awesome set. Now, I was going to mention to you that Anya Muir, she's a subscriber to both our channels, and I sent her some money because she said, look, I was over, she lives in Dusseldorf, Germany, where there's a Schmincke plant, and she said they have a little store, and she was in there the other day looking around, and she said, hey, do you know, Marty, they have another limited edition set? I said, no, they don't. She said, oh yeah. I said, buy it. And so I haven't taken it out of the shrink wrap yet.
Oh, wow.
Steve, but here's the old one, okay, the one I have, which shall ever be my faithful set, but this new one here has different colors in it. So anyway, enough, you know, because I mean, people collect art supplies and they never use them.
True.
I try to use everything I buy, and if I don't use it like in 6 months, I'll like give it away or sell it, or do whatever I need to get it out of my face.
I have people all the time that think there's some rhyme or reason. You know, I love these paints, for instance, this Mission Gold set.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Just gorgeous, gorgeous colors. And I'll just switch. I'll just rotate just because I'm in a mood, you know. I want to do something different. And this was Marty, this was my first pan set. Right here.
Yeah, those are beautiful.
I had to this point, before I bought these, I had not used pan paints at all, other than, you know, in elementary school.
Right. The cakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should talk about that because there's a difference between a cake and a pan.
That's right.
And usually, unless you're talking about Japanese cakes, they're cheap. They're going to be the cheaper, lower end. You know, Faber-Castell makes a line of kids paints. They're all in the cakes.
Yeah.
But the Japanese do cake, really good, high quality cake watercolors. Some is it Shinhan, or I forget what the manufacturer is, but they're really pretty good. Yeah. Anyway, and I got a lot of questions, I know you did, about the difference between a pan watercolor and a tube watercolor.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that, Steve?
You know, for the 40 or some odd years I've painted, I've only painted with tube. I've been primarily a studio painter. And we talked about this in the last broadcast. You kind of, I kind of wanted to do some plein air, and you kind of pushed me over the edge with your little adventure videos, which I thought were really cool. And so I thought, no, I got to get into, I watched James Gurney's videos, and I got to get into it. So I thought, okay, I can, and I did create a palette or two from my tube paints in a portable palette. And you can do that. That's fine. You don't ever need to buy pans.
Right.
But tube watercolor is just, it comes out of the tube wet, sticky, and like a paste.
Right.
But essentially, there's no difference in how it paints or acts. I have a lot of people ask me if there is. There really isn't. And a lot of people don't see the need to buy paint already manufactured and put in a pan form, and that's fine. It's true. You don't really ever need to. It all works the same. And eventually, you know, even when you take tube paints and put it in a pan like this, you end up with pan paints essentially, except that the pans don't come out.
Right.
So, you know, functionally, there's really not a difference. I think it's just fun to buy these little sets sometimes, and you can actually buy the standard palette that we've been showing you, and this is my Sennelier one. These little pans actually come out, and so when you buy a pan, you'll unwrap it. It looks like a little piece of candy almost.
It's awesome.
Yeah, isn't it? And then you unwrap it, and they're little clips, and you put the pans in there already filled. And a lot of suppliers will sell the pans already filled. But you can also buy those little plastic cups empty. I have some full here. Here's an example. These are full pans that are empty. And I think I've got some tubes of my Mary Blue that I'm going to put in here. But this is how they either come empty. You can buy them empty like this, or half pan would be just that. It'd be half of that. Yeah. And you can either buy them empty and fill them yourself, or you can buy them already filled. The one thing you have to be careful of is some paints dry hard out of the tube. Like Winsor Newton is not a good paint to fill pans with because it dries hard, chips, cracks, and falls out. I know there are remedies for that, but my M. Graham, my favorite paint, what I use mostly in the studio, and I even have a couple of plein air palettes set up with M. Graham. Because of the honey consistency, it dries tacky. It dries hard. That's about the consistency of a dried piece of gum.
Okay.
You know, like you would find underneath a desk somewhere. That's how it dries. It doesn't dry out. It still feels tacky, but it doesn't ever get hard. It never cracks. It never chips. So if you're going to buy a paint that would work well for filling pans, M. Graham is definitely one.
Let's talk about the economics of pan versus tube paints for a second, because as I mentioned earlier, if I buy a tube of Schmincke paint, I can get about 6 or 7 half pans out of that tube. Now, the tube might run, depends on the series, because you get very expensive where it costs like $30 a tube for Series 5 paint. Oh. So it's very expensive if you want to spend that kind of money. However, if you empty a normal half pan, like you buy a pan in the little package, you get done with it, or you're close to being done, and you buy a tube, the little half pan will cost you about $8 just by itself. The tube may cost you $13 or $14, but you can then fill that half pan like 5, 6 times, which I think is very economical. So I try to buy replacements in the tube, but you know, if I buy a custom set, it comes with the half pans already full, and then I'm not really too worried about that. But
and a pan,
eventually I want to replace it.
Even a half pan will last you a long time. Well, it depends on the color you paint, but you know, unless you're doing really huge paintings.
That's right. Or you know, like I know of Alvaro, right? How do you say his last name?
Alvaro Castanet? I don't know. Castanet.
Castanat.
Looks like Castanet, but I don't know.
Look like that. But somebody is like Castagnat, or I don't know. But anyway,
Castagnet, if you pronounce it the way it looks.
Yeah, now you and I, we both like that guy in his painting style, but he goes through some serious watercolor paint. I mean, he'll like squeeze a tube like it's oil paint onto his palette, and he's just working wet on wet, and he'll get some really rich, dark, mixtures in there, and
he'll take some red and he'll put it red down like it's impasto, like it's gouache.
Exactly.
And it's just watercolor right out of the tube.
Yeah, well, and for those of us that don't have a special endorsement deal with a paint company, we have to be a little bit more frugal about how we use our paints or what we want to spend. Now, when we talk about M. Graham and we talk about Schmincke, you're talking about higher end paints. In the United States, Schmincke is probably the most expensive paint you can buy. And let's be honest, not everybody can afford to do that. So there are other brands. Let's talk about those just quickly.
Yeah, well, Marty, let me just address that because, that was one of the things that put me off about Schmincke to begin with is they were overpriced. And I get from everything that I read and saw, it was not because of the paint. It was because of I'm guessing because of their distribution channels were just not as
could be
as I don't know, large or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have read several reviews where that was the case. It's just hard to find them at a good price unless you have a place like Wet Paint. They seem to. I haven't even seen. I have yet to go and I've been in some pretty big art stores.
Yeah.
I have yet to be in an art store that stocked Schmincke on the shelf. Wow. I know you can order it, through places like Blick and Jerry's Artarama and stuff like that, but I have never actually seen it on the shelf. You've got a rarity there with Wet Paint, and that's
we're all spoiled.
Yeah. So
taking a trip soon, and I keep trying to cajole, coerce, talk you into making the 3-hour trip up to, because you're going to be out in the Midwest.
Yeah,
but you're going to be so close. I could throw a stone, and we could. Yeah, I'm like, I got to get you up here, even if I have to pay bus fare. But one of these days, if you make a pilgrimage, Steve, and you always got a place to stay. But if you make a pilgrimage here, paint, because it's just a great place. Anyway,
I would love to. Awesome. I would love to. Yeah, what Marty's talking about is I'll be on vacation next week. We're going up to visit my wife's parents in Iowa, Spencer, Iowa. They're about 20, 30 miles from the Minnesota border. And Marty's been trying to talk me into hopping on up to St. Paul, Minnesota, Minneapolis area.
Yeah.
I would love to if I could find the slot, but I don't know if I will.
Well, they say about Iowa, Steve, like you see the Field of Dreams. You said, is this heaven? No, it's Iowa. But you'll know what I mean when you get there. It's beautiful. I love Iowa. People kid people down there, but because it's the Midwest and it's farmland, but it's beautiful.
It may be heaven because you die of boredom, but I don't want to. I don't want to insult anybody. I'm sorry.
Don't tell your wife.
Actually, she agrees with me.
Does she? Well, I love Iowa. It's a beautiful place.
It is. It really is.
It really is. People are salty.
I just.
But anyway, long story short, if you get a hold of, you can use like an American Journey watercolor, which is sold to, it's Cheap Joe's, right?
That's Cheap Joe's.
Yep, and it's their brand, but it's really Da Vinci.
It's Da Vinci, I think. Yeah.
Right.
I know their tubes are. I would assume their pans are also.
Yeah, their pans are. I'm
absolutely sure. Da Vinci is top-notch stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And
then you can get you can get some other brands that are a lot more affordable if you're just starting out. I'm trying to remember the name. Aquafine, Dale and Rowney Aquafine paint.
Okay.
Is paint that's really it's student grade, but I love it. It works really great.
Oh, okay.
I do a lot of pencil reviews too, Steve. You know that, but a colored pencil. My favorite colored pencil is not the cheapest colored pencil because Faber-Castell's polychromos are just great colored pencils.
Yes.
They're just made well,
Yes.
and they're oil based, and they just do what I want them to do.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to have the same opinion or be able to afford them. What I like about them is they're open stock. And I like paints like Schmincke because you can buy one tube or a single half pan or something. You know, you don't have to break the bank.
Yes.
But now they're out with the dot cards. And we got a question from a subscriber, Steve, and I think you're going to like this one. They want to know, by the way, here's all the 35 new colors that Schmincke just introduced. And I got to shut up because I'm a huge Schmincke fan.
No, that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about Schmincke mostly.
Let's talk about the colors you added on your bottom row. They're all from the 35 new colors that Schmincke just introduced this year. They're celebrating 125th anniversary.
Yeah.
And do you know what the color names are there, Steve?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in the set, the limited edition set, there were 3 from the new color range. This cobalt here, this French ultramarine. They had an ultramarine, but not the French variety. And then this perylene green, which is a sort of a gray green. Well, actually, there's 2 more. There's the quinacridone red light and the ruby red deep. So all total, they had, what, 5 new colors in their set. I just thought it'd be fun when I bought this limited edition set, and they had an empty row. I just thought it'd be fun to add 6 more colors from their new range.
How exciting is that?
It was just great,
awesome.
You know. And since these are all very, and here, let me show the colors.
Yeah.
Hopefully this will focus. Maybe if I get it closer to my face. You may not be able to read it, but you can at least see the colors. These top 2 rows are the limited edition, and you can see it is very botanical in nature. Some blues, some blue greens, reds. I added some earthy tones on this bottom. There's a transparent ochre, which is something I've never seen. There's a transparent sienna, which is pretty cool. This Saturn red is very much like a Venetian red, but it's a lot more transparent.
I love
There's a mahogany brown. This is something unique I'd never seen before. This was green umber.
Yeah,
and that's really cool. And then
cool
there's
color.
this graphite gray, which was almost like a neutral tint. So I thought that I spent an evening picking those out to kind of complement this up here, and I thought it made for a really, really nice 18 color set.
That's brilliant. And I know you're a little partial. I mean, from watching your work and getting to know you over the years, you're partial to, like, you do a fantastic job with the quinacridones and the reds and the burnt browns and the reddish browns and colors like that. They complement your palette and style really, really well. And yeah, I think you're a little partial. Your palette skews that way a little bit.
It does. I have for instance, this is my main, I would call this my main studio palette of M. Graham. I've got a core palette, and I've also got a Mission Gold and a something else that's not coming to mind right now. But this is my main one that I grabbed. Really, the only brown I have in here is this red iron oxide, but I've got several quinacridones over here.
Okay.
A violet, rose, and now, I'm not sure. I've got some golds, but I have sepia and neutral tint here in the middle. So with reds, I mean, you can create just about, or even like a red iron oxide, transparent red iron oxide, you can create just about any brown you want. So I've never gone in for buying a lot of the tube browns. I like to mix browns as much as possible. They just come out looking fresher and cleaner.
Yeah.
Reds will allow you to do that. Reds and red browns allow you to do that, and you can mute them down if you want.
Well, what do you do if you find that you've mixed a color that you absolutely love? Yeah. How do you read? Because in oil painting, I could rarely get, you know, it takes me a lot of effort to get the exact same color from mixing. How do you handle that?
You know, sometimes it just happens. It's serendipity. I have found colors on my palette that I can't explain where they came from. You know, it's like a mix. I started a long time ago, and this is a great point to bring up because I get people watching, beginners particularly, really think that there is like this recipe approach to colors, and you got to get the names right. You got to pick the colors just right. You've got to just, everything's got to be this perfect storm of having shopped really wisely. And I tell you, it just really is not that way. There's not a palette out there that I don't think I could at least make a good attempt at painting with. I've done a lot of sketches with these Sennelier, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of any of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so people ask me, well, what color were you using? And I said, I don't know. I've got the card that came with this set somewhere, but I don't remember where. You know, I don't have it nearby at hand, and I don't remember what it is.
Yeah.
You mix visually. You start taking paint and wetting it and putting it on your palette.
Does it become intuitive over time?
Yeah, it becomes very intuitive, and you look, you mix visually.
Yeah.
You know, forget the names of the colors. You know, I have over years, you know, I've learned what colors I like, and you know what colors, and I have made choices. But it's like, you know, and I don't use cadmium reds, and that's just kind of happened that way. You know, we could get into a long discussion about it, but I use quinacridones instead. But when I'm in the zone, when I'm painting, when I'm mixing, I am not thinking about the color. And sometimes I have to consult. I would even have to stop and consult my swatch card to even remember what something is. I mean, there are a lot of ones that I do remember, but there are some, and I think, oh, I forget. Is that quinacridone gold, or is that one Indian yellow? Because it's got other paint on it from mixing. I don't even know. Forget it. Yeah. Don't worry about the name. Just pull that paint, wet it out, pull it out on your palette, and start mixing. You get to know the color. What you need to know is the color wheel. Right. You need to know complements. You need to know how to make a brown out of a red, or out of an orange, or you know, or purple. You need to know how to mute that phthalo green so it's not so intense, you know, and just start making those colors shift, and you do all that visually. You don't do it with names, you know, and you may never remember. You may never remember what it was. Yeah. But a really experienced watercolorist a lot of times will just do it out of location. You know, it's like, I always go up here to this portion of my palette to paint this, you know, and they'll almost always, I did for years, they'll almost always fill their palette in the same order with the same paint. And they know where the hues are that they want. So
yeah, you get used to it over time. But I just think about the people who are very tightly wound about, for lack of a better word, about knowing exactly what color combination. So some painters I know, especially oil painters, take a very scientific approach at color mixing and values and things like that. And you know, I'm like you. I'm more like you. I skew towards the intuitive more than the scientific. But man, if they see me, sometimes I'll be plein air painting, and they'll go, you know, you might as well paint with mud, Marty. And I was like, well, why do you say that? Well, you know, because they'll have 17 brushes in their hands, you know, and they switch them out for every color and every mixture, and then they'll just hold them in their hand and they'll paint a little. And see, I can't be bothered with that.
Yes.
I have like 3 brushes, you know. Give me the darks, the lights, and you know, whatever, and then I'll just rinse them in my in my turp, and I'll just keep painting. You know.
Have you seen that book? Have you seen that book? It's like 1,000, 1,500 color recipes. I forget what it is. It's like a spiral bound. You open it up, and
Oh,
it's just like a matrix
a
of
Pantone
swatch.
book or something?
It's like that,
Yeah.
but it's for painting. And it's
Okay.
like a matrix like you would make by swatching out and combining colors.
Yes.
And it's just page after page after page. And to even really comprehend what color you're looking at, you'd have to look at it through a viewfinder, because you look at a page and after a while they all look the same, but they're slightly different. That may be okay when you're first starting out. You're just trying to learn to mix colors.
Yeah.
But when you're actually painting, or you're getting into doing some real painting, it's totally worthless.
This is interesting.
It's like the term I've heard is, it's like dancing while looking at your feet.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, well, this could be a whole show where we just talked about the scientific versus the artistic approach to art, because certainly there are some immutable laws of painting that if you don't follow, I don't care how good of a painter you are, you're going to mess stuff up. I mean, you know what I mean? Just the basics that you have to have. As you said, learning the color wheel and knowing cools and warms and not using them in the wrong spots if you're trying to get something to look like it really is. I mean, there's painters that have made a whole career out of using opposites.
Yeah.
They'll use cools where warms should be and warms where cools should be. But I think of that and I think to myself, you know, those immutable laws of painting, those are some scientific steps. It's just good to follow, good practice.
Yeah.
Wash your brush between colors, because you're going to paint mud if you're not careful about that.
Right.
But the rest of it, like swatching all these colors out and learning exactly color theory, like it's like I try to tell some new painters once in a while, Steve, and you'll appreciate this. It's like, it's interesting to go to the factory and watch them take the ground pigment and pour it in those big machines like they're bread mixers.
Yeah.
You know? And then watch them dab them out into the pans in a little machine, you know, and then they go into a cooker or whatever, and then they come out, and then you fill your. It's nice to watch the factory. All I want to do is paint, man. When I'm standing there watching them do that, I want to paint the process. I want to sketch the guy mixing it. I'm just like, anything that I'm not doing that's not painting is like a waste of time when it comes to art. I don't know. Maybe I'm too skewed to one end, but I just love to draw and sketch.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. You know, there's some diligence that you need to do, but in reality, you know, you just paint. You take the colors you have and you paint and you mix and you shift. I mean, sometimes I'll reach for a blue and I don't really even know if I'm reaching for cobalt or ultramarine. But I just know I need to blue a mixture up a little bit. And you know, it's not like a teaspoon of this and a quarter of teaspoon of that. It's just not that way. It's visual. It's very, very visual.
And I feel you're right. And I just feel especially like sorry for the poor miserable soul that spends 20 years studying art theory and never puts or brush to canvas. That's not art to me. That's just like, you know, I mean, it's important that somebody study it and learn it and stuff like that. But at a certain point, man, better is to get doing it.
Yeah. And you know, another subject we could make a whole video of, but I'll just touch on it here. And you know, I accept some of the blame for this on my channel, is a little bit of an over emphasis on light fastness, especially if you're practicing and doing journal or sketchbook work.
It's going to be
don't really need to be concerned about it. Now, I've always made a big deal about it myself because I don't like buying two sets of supplies. You know, a set for pictures that are going to hang and a set for doing journaling and sketching. But I mean, man, Marty, I don't know about you, I have gotten some comments on my channel that they just are obsessed with the little intricate integrations or, you know, iterations or whatever it is. if something doesn't have is 1 star short of the full light fastness rating, it's just, oh, I'm never going to use that color. You know.
And the thing is, Steve, that's marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it's BS. I mean, I put, you know, that's where science comes in for me, is I put these things in my window. I hang them up. I'm sure my wife hates me for this. I should. But I mean, I have these plastered on my window and they'll stay up for a year. And then I'll cover one, you know, I cover one side. And then I'll look at the colors later and I'll see which ones. I mean, yeah, it's interesting to know that. But honest to goodness, what you're saying is absolutely true. I mean, there are some people that just freak out if it's not a single pigment color. But you can't make some of these colors with a single pigment. No. You just can't.
And that doesn't necessarily mean they won't be light fast either.
Exactly. If somebody puts 4 stars on this, that could be complete BS. You know, it's not.
It's something everybody should know about. It should educate themselves about and should wonder, you know, about their supplies, but it's not something that you should be obsessed about, and especially diving into a brand, you know, and talking about, oh, well, that's 4 stars. I'm only going to choose the 5 stars, whatnot. You know, I mean, in reality, you can put if you do gallery wraps for your, if you are an exhibiting artist, or you do work that people are going to buy and it's going to hang, or it's going to hang on your wall, then you need to be somewhat concerned about it. If you don't know what you use, you know, you're not sure about the light fastness, use UV glass. You can buy UV glass and frame it in UV glass. Don't hang it somewhere, you know, in direct sunlight. You know, a lot of times artistic prints that are made from the original art, they're light fast, but a lot of times they're not as light fast as the original. That's, you know, and people hang those all the time. If you do gallery wraps, though, you can seal those with a UV sealer. You know, there's a lot of things you can do. But if you're not hanging pieces in a gallery or in a show, or you're not selling pieces that people are going to hang and are going to get regular exposure to light, if you're just a journal artist, sketchbook artist, you absolutely don't have to worry about it.
No, and I've had
1 star, you know, something that's 1 star but another star.
It'll freak people out. But if you see this though, Steve, like some people will say, well, I went into a gallery and I saw a painting that was 400 years old and it looked fresh. And that's because there's conservators whose only job is to go paint old paintings. There's so many layers of old paint on those old paintings because people have touched them. The Sistine Chapel has been redone dozens of times. They've been up there and they'll go up there and they'll touch it and paint it because paint wears out over the years, over hundreds of years and decades. And those old paints they were using, Steve, those weren't exactly what they would consider light fast by today's standards. But you brought up a really important point. I want to touch on this, and this is going to spill over into the sort of philosophical life area.
Okay.
Now, I don't know about you because you do it for a living, but here's the thing with me. I don't paint and draw as my primary source of income. Gotcha. When I go to work every day, I got to sit through stressful times and go to these crazy, stressful software release cycles and all this stuff. I mean, look, I'm not a paramedic or a policeman or anything like a pilot or anything like that, or a soldier. I used to be a soldier. Anyway, the point is, there's enough stress in life. When I come home and I paint or draw, I'm just like a 5-year-old kid again. And all of that stuff leaves me. The last thing I want to do is freak out about light fastness or whether the bristles on my brush are, you know, Siberian squirrel hair.
Absolutely.
I don't care. I'm just releasing. I just want to be a kid again and paint and have fun. You know?
Yeah, and I pay a lot of attention to light fastness because, as I said, at some point I'm going to do pieces that will hang on a wall.
Right.
Whether it's my own or a gallery or something I sell, and I just don't want to buy 2 sets, you know.
Right.
But you know, That's the
You're
only
not stressing
reason.
out about it every day, though.
No, I'm not thinking about it at all.
Don't ruin your experience, man.
Uh,
Just paint, right?
that's exactly right. That's
Well, we
exactly
got
right.
some questions filling up the room, and Val has been encouraging people to patiently wait. So we should.
Yeah, let's take some of those.
Yeah, let's take some questions. So Val, do you want to queue up the questions for us, or let us know what order we should take these in?
So I'm scrolling back here. See.
Yeah, and Steve and I, we talked about a little earlier. Val, if you're okay, we've got time, so we can take questions and answer as many as we need to tonight.
Do you mix paint on the pans or on the palette? That's a good question.
That's a great question.
You know, I'll tell you what I do, and then Marty, you can tell me what I pull paint into the palette as much as possible, but inevitably your pan is going to get contaminated. Just don't stress about that either. Some people stress about keeping their pans completely clean. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But as much as possible, I try to pull the color out into the palette. And a lot of times, if I'm going from color to color to color, I will contaminate the pans. But if I'm really trying to get a pure color like a red, and I need to clean it off, then I'll wash out the brush. I'll clean off the top of the pan, and then I'll pull out as pure red as possible. But usually I don't worry about it. I mean, you can take a pan, you know, set like this, and you can barely even tell what they are because they've got other colors on top. But as much as possible, I try to wet the pan and pull the color out into the palette.
Okay,
how about you, Marty?
Same thing. I mean, Steve, not much different. So this is my kit I take into the field. I'll, you know, if I'm painting a skin tone, I'll fill this little slot, and this one next to it, with some different shades of that same skin tone. And then, say for instance, because skin varies so much, there's such a wide range of skin color. If I'm painting an African American, I might mix some colors over here, which you know would be a lot browner, or maybe sort of pinkish brown or what have you. And I begin to fill all, you know, I just fill as needed. And then if I try to mix a specialty color, I'll like come over here in this area and mix a little bit as well. And then my whole palette starts to get kind of muddied, and I'll get some, you can see there's colors in these pans that probably don't belong there because I mixed in the pan or something. I dipped and didn't clean my brush completely. I don't stress about that, Steve, either. I'm like you. I just, you know, I'll try to get it right. And if it's wrong, it'll show up in my work. Yeah. And I'll learn that lesson for next time, and I'll be more careful. But I do it the same. I pull it in the palette. I don't mix in the pan colors. That single color, you got to dip into the pan, and you have to get it a little. The pan has to be a little moist for you to get the paint into the brush. So I'll get a little water in there and get it wet. Now I don't know if it's you. Yeah, I think I've seen. Do you use the sprayer to wet your paint?
Yeah, sometimes I will.
Okay.
Sometimes I will do that. A lot of times I'll just wet the few I know I'm going to use right then. But yeah, sometimes I'll spray the whole palette. That's a common way to wet it. Here's a question for you, Marty. Which one is better, Schmincke or M. Graham? Well, Marty will say Schmincke, and I will say M. Graham.
Yes, you will. And you won't be wrong.
No.
You won't be wrong, you know, because either one of those paints are going to be great for you.
You can't make a mistake either way.
No, you can't. And the thing is, they're both superbly manufactured. And your heart might lean one way or another. Like you might say, well, I love M. Graham, not only because they're great paints, but for instance, Steve, they're made in the United States. Yeah. You know, and so few things are made here anymore. It's nice to give an American business maybe your business.
Right.
And then you met Mr. Graham, so you have a personal connection.
I met Art Graham. I mean, how great is it to have the name Art?
That's right. And then be a paint
maker. But
that's exactly.
yeah, and then sometimes there are practical reasons. I can get M. Graham at my local art supplier right up the street. I don't
Right.
have to order it. So
No.
that's a
And
plus for
Schmincke's hard
me.
to find.
And their price
Yeah.
point is very, very attractive. It's lower than most other paints of its
Yes.
same grade
Now,
in
I should
cost.
say that in the hands of a guy like Steve, who's probably on magnitudes of order 50 to 100 times more skilled at watercolor painting than I am, in the hands of the right guy, I could give you the cheapest Cotman watercolor paint and whatever, and you'd still manage a good painting. So a lot of it just comes down to, if you practice and you get good at your craft, you're going to do good. It won't, like, I use the Humble #2 pencil a lot,
Sure.
just to draw simple pictures, you know. It's the cheapest thing in the world. It costs less than 11 cents for this pencil. You know?
And you know what's interesting, Marty, is I used Cotmans from tubes probably 20 years professionally as a professional illustration.
Wow.
Okay. I didn't pay a lot of attention. It did what I needed it to do, and I didn't question. I didn't see. It wasn't until I started getting into the finer points of artist grade paints that I even wanted to check them out, and then I was like, oh, okay, I see. Right. But the point is, I turned in and got paid professionally for good work from Cotman Paint. Now there are a lot of people out there that hate Cotman.
Right, there are, and I'm not I'm not like a paint hater. Like a brand hater or anything. The only thing I ever axe I have to grind is with Prismacolor, because they were so great for so long, and then they outsourced all their factory work to foreign countries, and the quality went downhill, and I was always disappointed with Prismacolor for that. But I got to take a quick bio break. Believe it or not, Steve. Yeah. But I have a question that came into my channel not long ago from our last collab, and I forgot. We never got a chance to answer it, and I want to respect that user. And I'm going to go take that break. But before I do, here it is, Steve. Can you talk about the difference between watercolor and gouache and how you use it in your practice?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, be right back.
Yeah. Okay, gouache is just a opaque watercolor. I know gouache is in every respect a watercolor, but it's just opaque. It mixes with watercolor. I've had people tell me it doesn't, but it does. I've done it for years. In fact, you can buy 2 or 3 of like the lighter color, like a light sort of a Naples yellow or a white, and you can tint it with watercolor that has a lot of tinting strength, and it works just great. It flows. The flow is a little different, but you can do wet and wet washes. You can do just about everything you can do. Now, I don't use gouache a lot. I'm primarily a transparent watercolor painter. My first Schmincke palette was this one. And what I've done here, and I think I mentioned this in my most recent sketching video, I filled this side with gouache. And I was kind of inspired to do that by James Gurney, because James Gurney paints on location a lot with gouache. But this is all Schmincke. I bought this 12 Schmincke set here. And I thought, well, this is good. I'm going to make this, really kind of utilitarian, flexible watercolor palette. And I'm going to add the gouache. When you're on location, and you're doing sketching, and a lot of times the sketching is looser, you don't have time to plan for highlights and stuff like that. And so it's helpful to be able to paint opaquely. And so that's the reason I added this. And this is M. Graham gouache here. I was just explaining, Marty, how I added this to this is my original Schmincke palette.
Ah, okay.
This is the 12 color set. This is the watercolor over here.
Yeah.
And this is the M. Graham gouache over here.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. Do you have an example, Steve, like a painting that you've done handy or something that you could show that shows kind of the effects of gouache on a painting? And maybe I'll talk. Yeah. I know I put you on the spot there, and I'll do that to Steve once in a while because I just love his work. It'd be good if he showed us that. But we're getting lots of great questions. Steve and I will try to get to all of your questions as much as we can, and I really appreciate everybody who's tuned in and asked these great questions. Well, you guys got a ton of them, and they're all awesome. What brand does Reese use? Yeah, I'll ask Steve about that. Yes.
Okay.
Let's see what else. Yeah. Okay. Did you find an example?
Yeah. And anybody that saw my more recent sketching video saw these.
Oh, your thumbnails.
Yeah, well, these are not thumbnails. Those are the thumbnails.
There's your thumbnails. Yeah, that's right.
I guess you could. This is kind of a step up from thumbnails, but they are studies.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mentioned this in the video, but it's a good way. Now you can use gouache it any way you want. Some people paint completely with gouache and use a little bit of watercolor. I'm the other way around. I use mostly watercolor and just add a little gouache, and mostly for sketching. For my larger studio paintings, I rarely use any gouache. I try to plan for the highlights, but it's great for sketching. Like, see the little highlights in the gable there, and
yeah.
I cleaned up some of these. I guess you call them eaves.
Yes.
I cleaned up some of the windows, and cleaned up some of these.
Soffits and fascia.
Yeah.
See up there. Okay.
All with gouache. Did all that with gouache. If I were doing that as a studio painting, I would have planned and drawn more carefully.
And masking fluid, would you have used?
Yeah, probably use masking fluid. That way, I could have paint that dark just right through that area. And,
right.
Hey,
Steve, why do they call it frisket?
I don't know. Frisket is an airbrush term also. It's the peel and stick stuff.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know the paint on frisket. It's just mask.
It's just mask.
That's just all it is. Yeah.
And does it lift the same way, like the rubbery, consistent? Yeah. You can just rub it right off. Okay.
Same thing. Yeah.
Gotcha. You did a video on how to use masking fluid at one time, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. And different ways to lift it off.
Right. I showed several different ways to apply it.
Right.
From brush to little applicators to all sorts of ways. So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Question. When making your own travel, this is from Ryan Hayback, or Hayback. I'm going to say that wrong. Apologies, Ryan. But question. When making your own travel palette with tube paints, do you prefer filling traditional pans, or do you like more open pans, similar to the Magello palettes? What do you think, Steve?
I missed some of that question, Marty. I'm sorry.
Well, okay. When you're making your own travel palette with tube paints, do you prefer filling traditional pans, or do you like more open pans, similar to the Magello palettes? Like the one you showed, your regular palette, your studio palette, I'm going to assume that is?
Yes.
Right. So when you're going into the field in the olden days, before you started using pans, what would you prefer?
I just buy, the way I used to do it, well, I mean, I really don't have a preference either way. It's kind of to go this route.
Yes.
To buy the empty pans like this is a more expensive route, because these kits will cost you more. You don't really have to do that. I'll just buy the open sort of palette, like the plastic ones.
Sure.
And you can get them in all sizes, and I'll just fill those.
And you can close that up, seal it, and it won't.
Yeah.
Got the little rubber gasket around the.
Some of them do. Yeah, the Magello one does.
Okay.
Let's see. Hold on.
Yeah. Because Steve and I, not long ago, we were talking about this guy that we know on YouTube called I think his name is, I want to say Tiochi. That's his name, the guy on YouTube. he has problems because
Tioichi.
Tioichi, yeah, because he lives in a place that's very damp constantly, and so his paints will mold.
Yeah, and you got to let them dry. You got to let them dry out. If you have a watertight or gasket type palette, I wouldn't close it up if they're wet. I mean, I wouldn't store it.
Let that dry. Right.
Yeah, this is the one with the gasket. This is a little large, maybe, if you're trying to do a very compact planar kit. But I could, you know, in a backpack, my backpack kit, I could fit this. But you can't probably see it. This is Magello's. There's a gasket.
Gotcha.
Right here.
Yep.
They intend this to be used also for acrylic if you want. So they try to keep it airtight. Yeah, and I would not.
Oil's the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I would not close this up until I mean maybe just to get out of the field and get home.
Gotcha.
Excuse me, but I would not close this up to store until everything was dry.
Understood.
Or it would mold. Yeah, it could easily mold.
Steve, this is from K Van. Do you have any tips for increasing sketching, painting speed? Pre-mixed, convenient colors, help! Exclamation point.
Not any process things I can think of. Just I would go limited palette. That would be my first. If you're talking about sketching with paint, which I assume you are.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, sketching with paint. I go limited palette. Limited palette is always well, it's great practice first of all because then you're focused on values.
Sure.
But it also will increase your speed. There, especially if you're not experienced. Throwing in, the more colors you throw in there, the more decisions you have to make. It can actually make it for a stressful painting situation.
And that's what you're trying to avoid when you're out painting.
Right.
So just a quick mention that Steve and I are collaborating tonight. We're live. I think we have like 200, almost close to 300 viewers watching live right now. And thank you to everybody who joined from both our channels. We really appreciate that.
Yes.
Steve and I, it took us a year to figure out how to do one collab, and now a month later, this is our second one, and who knows, we might make it a regular thing. Who knows? But I sure do love spending time with Steve, and he and I talk on a regular basis over the phone and internet and whatnot, compare notes, and I just it's just one of the joys.
I totally agree. I think Marty and I just talk real easily, and we love to talk about art supplies, and we thought that it'd just be a great thing to share. So you know, that's that's kind of the whole history behind it right there, isn't it, bud?
That's it. Yeah, well, I said we kind of found a mutual love, and it's art. And you know, when you share that passion, it's like you find somebody else who's as passionate as you are about it. And you know, by the way, Steve, and this isn't sunshine, man. You're entertaining as well. I love watching your videos. I mean, sometimes I'll just it'll be serious. Well, it'll be serious, and then all of a sudden you'll say something. I'll just crack up laughing because I know what you're talking about. I've been there. Or you know, there's one video where you're cranky about something and you run out and fast forward out to the middle of the field. You get mad and then you come back and you're like, yeah, that's it. You know, you're very entertaining, and I just enjoy the heck out of your channel. But hey, we got more questions. Here's a really good one, Steve. What are your favorite art video channels on YouTube? What can you name a few of yours?
Steve? Yeah, let's see. Art video channel. You know, I kind of move around. There's a guy that started doing videos recently, and I'm going to mispronounce his name, but he's very talented. And he's very loose, much looser than me, so I always admire that. His name is Nateen. Nateen, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Nateen Singe, Nitin Sin.
Nitin, yep.
Is it Nitin? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he says it. I think he says it Nateen when he says it. But
fair enough.
I think he's in India, and he just does beautiful, loose painterly landscapes, and he's something I've kind of been watching a lot lately. It's kind of mesmerizing. It just he just kind of starts at the top with the sky and works his way down. He kind of does it in a 3 to 4 layer approach, you know. Light washes, middle washes, and then adds those dark shocks, and everything is very loose, and you think, you know, is that going to really turn out to be anything? And it always does. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I love his channel. I always enjoy Alan Owen, if you know him. He's a UK painter, and he does really good work. Very experienced. I'm trying to think. I mean, there was a young lady who's one of the best floral painters I've seen on YouTube. Ty something Welander.
Okay.
And she does. If you just watch one of her video, watch one of her sketchbook journal tours, and your jaw will drop. She's very good, very talented. I'm trying to think who else. Oh,
well, go ahead.
Go ahead. You come up with some.
I was going to name a few. I have like 3 off the top of my dome right now that I really love to watch. Well, first of all, a shout out to Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter, because although Lindsay, you know, she's not like she doesn't try to be a fine art painter or anything like that, but she's very good, and I love watching what she does with just crafting supplies and all that stuff. And the thing about Lindsay is her personality is so exuberant and fun. I just have a blast watching her.
She just makes painting very accessible, I think.
Exactly.
To people who are probably not inclined to do a lot of painting, you know, and are intimidated. She kind of takes that intimidation away. That's the one thing I've always liked about her approach.
She will, and so just like not just because she's here, but sometimes I'll go over and just binge watch Val's channel because of what she does, which is different from what I do. I don't do any kind of burning, or they call it pyrography. You know, which I find it's exceptional when people can use tools and methods that weren't necessarily created for that specific thing, like a wood carver or a wood burner or a chiseler or sculptor, and just make beautiful things with it. So sometimes I'll just go over and binge watch Val's channel. The other channel I really like, and you know, you're on my top 5 for sure, Steve, but is Peter Draws. He's just crazy.
I like
he's just nuts.
Stuff.
And I love Peter and love watching his stuff. And he's so personally entertaining and humorous. He's got a couple of videos out there where he reviews famous paintings. Like he's talking about the Mona Lisa, and he goes, you know, if they just chopped off her head, I like the background. I like the background. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's funny that way, and I just love watching him. Now your channel, I often just go to because I want to learn something. I want to learn a technique. I want to see you out in the field or doing something in the studio that I've never tried before. And I think you have something like 99,964 subscribers or something.
I'm getting close.
You're like within the 20s of getting or 30s of going over 100,000 subscribers, which I think is amazing.
And since you brought it up, I got a big giveaway coming for that. And I hope I can get it done. I hope I can get the video done before I go on vacation next week. If not, it'll come after, but it's coming. I'm giving away, Marty, 20 blocks of Stonehenge Aqua. 10 blocks.
No way.
Yeah, they provided, they're sponsoring the whole giveaway. They provided 10 blocks of hot press and 10 blocks of cold press. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun giveaway.
That's a hell of a, and I can't even, I'm not eligible because I think I was subscriber number 4 behind your wife and your family. So
maybe, I don't know.
I was an early adopter of the Steve Mitchell channel. But one of the things I was going to mention about, so There's Lisa Clow, and
Yep,
what do you
yep.
what's her channel? Lacry
Fine Art.
Lacry Fine Art.
It's
Yeah,
Angela
she's
Fair.
great. Angela Fair. Yep. There's just some
Angela,
heavy hitters.
Angela has a great way of really infusing you with the joy of what the paint does. I've always admired that about her. Just, you know, sometimes you just got to remind yourself. I mean, she's a great painter, but she's a great loose painter. But just the fun and the joy of watching that paint flow, watching it do its thing, which is very close, you know, to my whole idea of the mind of watercolor. Watercolor has a mind of its own. And you partner with the medium and let it do its thing.
I want to give a quick shout out, and we've got some more questions, but while I'm thinking of it, to Judith Rowland. She sent me some paints recently, some Schmincke pans, which, you know, they're never cheap. And she just said, hey, you know, I just want to give this to you as a gesture of goodwill and as a gift. I got them in the mail the other day, and I was just excited to get those and unwrap them. And she wrapped them so well and everything. I just really appreciate the subscribers, you know, that come over. You know, Steve, like my channel, you know, it's been around for 8 years or 9 years this year. And I have a little over 20,000 subscribers. But when people come to my channel, I had this woman come over to the channel and make a comment not long ago, and she said, you know, I just like to watch your channel because you help me go to bed. They'll put me to sleep, and I didn't know how to take that. She was like, "Well, you have such a soothing voice that you know when you do your videos,
that's it. You relax.
It helps relax.
You relax them and put them in a happy mood. We'll go with that.
I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna stick with that, Steve. Is that all right?
That's right.
Because I'm like NPR on Quaaludes. You know, it's like
yeah.
Welcome to Cooking with Marty. But
right.
yeah, so anyway, I was thinking about oh well, here we got questions. I don't want to deviate too much. Let's see. Here's a question. What is the best way to get out of painter's slump? This is by Sue Gilreath, or maybe that's Gilreath. I don't know how to pronounce the last name exactly, but she says, what is the best way to get out of painter's slump? I'm dealing with a lot of stress in my life right now, and I really need to paint.
That's a really good question. I guess it depends on how you define slump. Is it motivation to paint? Is that what you mean by slump? Or is it you don't know what to paint?
Could be writer's block.
Yeah, fear of the blank page. Fear of the blank page is usually not what people think it is. I actually did a written blog on my written blog about that. A lot of people think it's creative block. It's usually fear of not doing something worthwhile, and you have to think about that for a minute. You know, if you don't paint a lot, which usually is most of us, if you don't paint a lot, you want to take your painting time when you do decide to sit down and paint, and you want to do something that you feel like you didn't waste your time. You know, you sat down, you did something that was really great, you know, and sometimes you put too much expectation on yourself to say, you know, this is all the time I've got today. This may be the only time I have the whole week. I want to come away from this painting session really satisfied. And so you start building up that pressure. You know, if not knowing what to paint is your problem, it's usually due to that, and you just have to kind of dispense with that fear. You just have to paint. I mean, if it's motivation, that's a little tougher. You know, it's just, I deal with that a lot too. Sometimes you're just tired, you know, and you want to paint something, but your mind is just, you can't engage it the way you need to. One of the things I used to do a lot is I would break things down into baby steps. And so I would get like several drawings going. I'd draw something and then I'd go draw something else, and I'd have things start maybe 2 or 3, get things in process. Just take a few minutes. Don't necessarily try to do something from start to finish, but get it started. And usually I find with me, if I start something, I have a hard time staying away. Then I want to go back and I want to put in this wash and I'll put in that wash, and I go back and I'll be sitting down there in the living room watching TV, and I think, oh man, I want to go up there and you know. But if it's not started, you know, I have no call. There's nothing calling me to my studio to paint. So a lot of times it's just getting some things started, maybe 2 or 3 started, and just do a little here, a little there. So
let me talk about this for a second, because I think I can help, maybe a little bit anyway.
Sure.
So like in our country, we're over-medicated, over-barraged, overworked, overstressed, over everything, because we think we have to be these things that we're not. If you're a woman, you have to look young when you're 60. I mean, how ridiculous is that? If you're a man, you know, you have to have everything from a chiseled abs to a very large penis, or whatever it is. You know, you knew that was going to make it into the video, right? So it's like just silly stuff. The demands of the world are ramping up more and more, and the pressure's just getting higher and higher. And the one area I don't want any of that noise in is that 5-year-old kid that sits down to paint and just finds that escape. And what I found that works for me, and I hope this helps the woman that asked the question, is that make a habit. So anything in life is possible if you can make a habit of it. So if you know the way you get up and brush your teeth in the morning and brush them at night. I mean, some people brush their teeth 3 times a day. I don't know. I just do it in the morning and at night, whatever. If you go to the gym, you make that investment. You're making an investment in yourself. Art feeds the soul. It allows you to recapture that, a little bit of the varnish, that take a little bit of that varnish and crust off, and the barnacles of life, and all that stress and all that pressure on you. It lets you get them right off, and you let the showers of love and freedom just wash over you. And that's a gift that God gives us. And I mean, I don't want to get too religious here, but I feel very strongly about that the God, the universe, whatever you want to call your higher power or whatever it is out there, that's a gift. And to neglect that gift is way worse than to have to stress a little bit once in a while because you know you've got this obligation or that obligation. I mean, let that stuff go and make it a habit. And if you can make it a habit, just practice it for a week, and it'll turn into 2 weeks, and 2 weeks will turn into a month, and months will turn into years, and you'll be like Steve and I, old dudes that have got these catalogs full of bad drawings but good lessons.
Excellent points, Marty. And you know, the only thing I would add to that, the lesson I've given frequently on my videos is embrace failure. And a lot of my viewers are familiar with that statement. I've made it repeatedly, but man, it is so important. If you're after a result, if you're after a great result, every time you sit down to paint, you're just not going to paint very often.
It's unrealistic.
It's just really, you have to love the learning. You have to love what you're going to learn through that process more than you love the result.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're just not going to paint that off. You're going to sit down and say, I'm going to go up and paint, but you know, I'm kind of afraid to get started. I'm afraid it's just going to turn out like crap, and you know, I'll be more frustrated when I'm done than when I started. You know, all of those things will keep you from painting.
No, I agree, and you know, just to tie a bow on that topic, just really quick, everything you said about that is right on, but the good positives that come from it, you know, like I was talking about this the other day, that the Nelson Mandela statement that I never lose, I only win or learn. And if you allow yourself to feel that way, if you allow yourself that moment of that's okay, that drawing's not perfect. I learned something from it, or I didn't mix the paint well, but geez, I learned what not to do.
There you go.
You either win or you learn.
Right.
You know, and that's, I think, just a great way to approach life and in general. And you, hey, Steve, you'll know this, because when you're in a zone with your art and you're freeing yourself that way, you're just a better human being.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're starting to notice beauty in life. You look at your wife and you say, geez, I never noticed that you had these beautiful features, or something, you know what I mean? Or something like that. You start to just, it's amazing how your life changes when you're positive about it.
That's really, really true. It's so true. You start looking at elements too, elements that make great art, rather than trying to think of what your next great painting is going to be, or your next great drawing. Instead, you're thinking, how could I better illustrate light and shadow? How can I get that cool green I see over there under that tree? You know, what's the different ways I could try that? You know, that's the way you need to think, instead of thinking, oh, I've got to do my next great piece, my next great painting. I got to do my next success.
That's not
You'll bomb.
You shame yourself into inactivity, which just sucks. Here we got a question from MD Campbell. He is a relatively new YouTuber. I went over and checked out his channel because he was talking about what do we do with our old sketchbooks, and he does something very interesting with his old sketchbooks, and I just want to give that a plug. So if you go over and see his channel, his name is MD Campbell, and he's got a channel on YouTube, but he's got a great question too. Check out his video on what he does with his old sketchbooks. Here it is. While painting, what thing frustrates you versus what surprises you positively? Steve, we kind of just touched on that a little bit, but what do you think when you're in the act of the actual painting? What frustrates you, and what aspects do you feel?
Yeah, it's probably going to be different for me than it will be for somebody else. I do put a lot of pressure on myself, even though, you know, I recommend that you don't. But you know, what can I say? I've been a professional for 40 years, so I've had to, you know, I've had a lot of clients put pressure on me, so you have to learn to deal with it. So sometimes I get an overzealous mind's eye, and I see something the way I think I want it to be, and then when I start putting paint down, it's deviating from that, and so the frustration starts to build. I think that's probably where, you know, I get frustrated the most. I think one of the best lessons that I'm starting to learn, and I'm trying to teach my viewers, is react to what watercolor is giving you. Now, sometimes you have to closely control, you know, the art and the image and the lines and contours and shade. Sometimes you don't. But if the piece is developing, and if you haven't lost it, you know, maybe you can take it in a different direction and try to react. That's kind of a freeing concept to me, because for so many years I've had to do something and then wonder if the client's going to accept it or not, and, you know, what's going to be there. You know, they can be ruthless, you know. They can be ruthless, and, you know, when you're painting for yourself, you don't have to be. So
well, and there again, that's not a manufactured pressure. That's actual real pressure, because the client doesn't pay you if they don't like what you produce.
But see, now I would say that I'm the client and my viewers, and the pressure is changed, but I'm still, you know, I still have to be careful not to incorporate that old thing. You know, I can, because it's fine art, I can kind of let it take on its own life and move in directions that surprise me and delight me. And so I have to be careful not to let that frustrate me.
Yeah.
So for me, that's it.
Well, Annette Williams asked a question. I think I can answer a little, at least maybe both of us can address this, but I'll take a crack at it. How do you deal with people asking you to paint things for them? I'm new to painting, really, not so great at it yet, but have almost stopped trying due to this. So like if you post something on social media and somebody goes, oh, hey, you're a great artist. I'd really love you to draw. Could you paint my dog? And that'll happen a lot from time to time.
Yeah.
Thing is, if it's a hobby you love, you get to pick whether or not you want to do it. And here's the other thing I do is I get, okay, cash money, you know, sister. So if you want me to draw your dog, it's going to be like, you know, I'll charge you to do that, because guess what? You're not just paying for the picture that I'm drawing you or painting you. You're paying me for the 30 years of mistakes I made so that I could draw your dog so that it looks like your dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it. I don't mind.
It's a sticky situation. I have found that there are people who think that they're complimenting you by asking you to paint something for them. I ran into that with some friends. And, you know, I realized that was the situation, but it's still, it doesn't make it any easier to figure out what to do, because you know, if you want to do it and you have the time to do it, I don't see a problem. But you know, if you're trying to build a business, then you just have to treat it like a business.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I mean, if you're going to invest time in drawing, I mean, one thing, like my dad is also, he spent his career in graphic design and illustration. And one of the things he was saying about comic book artists, right? And I think you and I talked about this one, Steve, is like, you could be the best artist in the world, the best comic book artist in the world. If you can't deliver 24 pages in 2 weeks or a month, you're out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's deadlines.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta continue to do it. And that kind of pressure of doing things like that on a timeline, because I already do that at work with software. I don't want to do that in my painting work. I get frustrated.
Yeah,
so if
you
lived it.
Yeah, well, comic book art. I had a nephew who was good enough to be a professional comic book artist, and I tried to persuade him away from it. It's absolutely a brutal profession. Brutal.
It's a meat grinder, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. About 90% of comic book artists out there get burned out in 5 years or less. And I used to be able to even name them. You can be, though, a comic book style illustrator, and that's different. It doesn't have the same kind of, work grinder kind of pressure to it.
Right. Because those are mills, right? I mean, they just grind through artists, because everybody wants to be a famous comic book artist, right?
Crank it out, crank it out, crank it out, come back tomorrow and do it again. And it's just brutal. Just brutal.
Page after page after page. Now, if you want to strike pay dirt in this day and age, a lot of it's digital. You could do digital work, but there's a lot of work for one-off comic strips or comic characters or things like that. I think people can make a decent living at that. But we're into a whole different territory when we talk about how to make money with your artwork. And we've got questions here, so let's ask. Question. This is from Tammy Wilson, who asks, question, paint abstract out of emotion? I can't paint like you guys do. You guys paint objects. Do you all paint abstractly? Meaning, I think that's a Southern way of saying, do we paint abstractly? Do you all paint abstractly? I don't know. I'm just teasing you, Tammy. But
I'm not sure what the question is, but
do you paint abstractly? And because we paint and landscapes and still lives,
representational art,
right? Representation. What do you think about painting abstractly? Do you ever just try that?
I don't do it myself. I admire good abstract painters. I have special, well, not special, but specific tastes that way. I mean, I like design. If somebody's going to paint abstractly, I like design. Some very considered design. Some people just, and I'm getting into preference and opinion here. I'm not getting into any kind of art rules. So don't take this as this is the way it should be. But this is just my preference is I like to see good design in abstract. I like to see leading eye elements, pleasing shapes and colors, elements that lead you in and through the painting and just kind of delights you. I'm not one of these William de Kooning types, you know, where it just looks like they're squirted paint all over the canvas. That doesn't appeal to me. I don't really. I'm not saying that's not art. It just doesn't appeal to me. So I like that. I'd always try to put design into my own painting so that if I reduced the representational objects down to shapes, I would still have a design. I would still have something pleasing if I took away all the representational and realistic elements. But that I don't really do it. So I don't know about you, Marty.
Well, I tell you, I'm in the same camp you are, Steve. Somebody tried to explain abstract art to me once, and then he walked away. And then a guy who's been painting abstract art for like 40 years, he's this old gentleman. He came up next to me and he goes, "If anybody tells you how to look at abstract art, they're a liar." He goes, "You walk up to abstract art and you feel it, and that's all you need to do." And then he walked away, and I never saw the guy again. But you know what I mean? That always stuck with me. It's like abstract art is about the feeling that you get when you look at it. Don't try to decipher it. Don't try to figure it out. Just be one with it for a few minutes and just, you know, like mellow out. You know, it's like, it should just happen to you.
Yeah, I agree. That's a valid way to approach it. With me, I tend to look at it because I've been a graphic designer for so long. I tend to look at it in design terms, and I frame it that way. And like I was at a Andrew Wyeth exhibit. They are doing a special one at our local
I love
museum
Andrew
here.
Hang on, I'm going to show you. Keep going.
Yeah. And so the Andrew Wyeth, one of the things I love about his painting is that they're so well designed, and you could, you know, if I were to take, I would actually have to do this. I'd have to put tracing paper over a print of his paintings and show you, but he designs the elements so well. If you took all the representational aspects out of it, the shadow, the detail, there would all be really interesting abstract designs. And they just work together well. So that's kind of the thing that appeals to me. What you got, Marty?
Well, I was just going to say, I got this book, 3 Generations of the Wyeth Family, because you got NC, you got Andrew, and then you got Jamie. Wyeth, right? Yeah. And they're all, and then there's the autobiography, and some of these books are out of print now in limited edition, but one I really recommend is Andrew Wyeth's The Helga Pictures. You know, he had a special relationship with this woman who came to who lived on this farm with her family, and he painted her. And a lot of this is egg tempera, but it's just brilliant work, as you know. And then if you remember, N.C. Wyeth was the Brandywine, right? He was with the
illustrator. He was the part of the Brandywine school. He was the father who was an illustrator.
Yeah, that's his work, and there's more of his work, and he's just great. Anyway, we're both on the same path when it comes to on the same page when it comes to the Wyeth family. They're all brilliant. And if you guys don't know him, you should check him out. Hey, hang on a second, Steve, because I see that we have some of French visitors. So Essie and Yves Bolt, I believe they're both Canadians, but French Canadians in Montreal. So anytime you want to speak French, Steve, we can communicate that way to them.
I think I'll decline.
Bonjour. But I'm glad to see them here as well. Here's a question for you, Steve.
Yeah.
How do you make, and you do some field work, but this is probably for both of us. How do you make your watercolor palette in urban sketching / painting? This is from Ayat May.
Okay, I guess you mean how do I set one up for urban painting?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I don't do anything special. My palette is my palette. I paint everything the same, whether it's a floral or portrait. I may pull different colors. For urban sketching, I may end up going to a particular set of colors that's on the palette, but I don't do anything special. It's the same, and if you're talking about the type of palette, it's the same plein air palettes I use to do anything else, a landscape. So nothing special for that. No.
Okay. As a matter of fact, I mean, I showed it a couple of times, but my this is part of my kit for when I go in the field. It's just the straight, you know, it's just the straight Schmincke kit there. You can kind of see it. You know, whatever it is, 24 half pan set.
Yeah.
And then I use a Faber-Castell TK 9400 lead holder, which I do most of my penciling work with. So I'll do graphite, then I'll do watercolor, and then occasionally I'll ink over that Stedler. It's called like a Stedler fine liner or something like that. It's really good, a good pen. It's on my channel. I describe all these materials, but yeah, that's it. Sketchbook, like a Stillman and Burn or a good Hahnemühle, or there's B paper that makes a great multimedia sketchbook, and you can, and you got it. Remember that sketchbook we talked about last time with the Kickstarter guy?
Yeah, the perfect sketchbook.
Yes.
Erwin Leon, yeah.
Erwin Leon. And so you can buy something custom made, and I think that was a little bit expensive, right, Steve? But
yeah, they're about
you're
50
part of
bucks. About 50 bucks a piece. They're leather bound though. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous, you know, with bound real watercolor paper, real Fabriano Artistico paper bound inside. Can't do better than that.
And what was it, 140?
No, it was 90.
90, okay.
90 pound, but that's sufficient, you know, for a sketchbook.
Yeah, it feels like a light cardstock, right? A 90.
Yeah.
Okay. Question. Do you guys use watercolor mediums? Like, what would gum arabic be a good use for? This is from Crazy Ketchum.
I don't. I've seen it done. I've seen gum arabic used for altering the flow. I don't. I can't really talk about it much because I don't use really anything but water.
Okay.
So
okay.
You know.
Okay.
I have used
I don't either,
granulation medium. I have used that. I did a video on that.
Talk
It
about
increases
that
the granulation.
for a second.
That's really cool. If you want to do some really textural elements, and you know, you can look up my granulation video. You can add this medium to your paint, and it makes it look like you put sand in it but it's not gritty. It really makes it granular. The thing I found though is you need to do that on a separate, like a styrofoam plate or something, because it kind of contaminated my palette, and I was dealing with granulation on my palette for like 3 or 4 paintings afterwards when I didn't really want it. So, but it really works well if you like granulation.
Good. Well, we'll take a couple more questions, then Steve has to go to bed because he's old and it's late.
That's it. That's right, man.
That's just
I'm hiding my yawns over here.
Here, Victoria Diaz asks a really good question, Steve, and I'm interested in what you have to say about this. How do I deal with the fact that people don't take me seriously? Want to teach art because I'm self-taught. I know my stuff, but looks like it's not enough. How can I gain more respect?
You know, that sounds like a question. That sounds like you're wanting a particular person to take you seriously. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you, but you know, my stock answer would be, who cares? You know, if you can't get students to take you seriously, that may be another thing, and I don't know why that would be. It could be varying. But if you're able to get students and you love teaching and you know your stuff, as you say, don't worry about who else takes you seriously. You know, I don't know really quite how to address that because, again, it sounds to me like there's a particular person or group of people that you want to take you seriously, but they're not.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to address that. If there's one particular person, and if they're not standing in your way, then don't worry about them. Show them. Show them you can do what you say you can do.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, go out and get the students and just do it. You know, eventually, if you do it well, they'll take you seriously. If they're standing in your way, well, you know, then you'll have to deal with that on your own. But
go around well, sometimes in life you find out that with the internet, it's kind of become the great equalizer of talent. I mean, it's like, you know, it's the marketplace, and that'll determine how good or valued, you know, your work is sometimes. And you'll think to yourself, well, you know, I posted this great painting I thought was awesome. It didn't get enough likes on Facebook. Or people will think like that. Or they'll think, well, I went to a show and I hung 40 paintings and I only sold 2, or I didn't sell any. And listen, I got news for you. There's painters from every era that were spectacularly great painters that didn't sell a damn painting for years and years and years and years. Yeah. And they were never taken seriously. And a lot of those artists, when you ask them, when you pin it right down, they would say, the time, you need to stop taking yourself so seriously and quit worrying about other people taking you seriously, and you'll do fine.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Respect, well, that's a tough one. You got to give it to get it. I know that much in life. But like, if it's the art community, whatever the art community is, hey man, there's a lot of art snobs out there. So I'm like, hey, just because I don't paint in the right way you think I should paint, I'm still a 5-year-old in my heart, and I enjoy what I do. As long as I love it, who cares what they think?
That's right. You know? That's right. You know, well,
to a certain extent.
I saw one question here from MD Campbell. Question: if you were to take a limited palette into the field, just 3 or 4 colors, what would you choose, and which brand?
Now, you've done that, Steve. You actually did that.
Yeah.
What was the limited palette video? It wasn't that long ago either, was it?
Are you talking about the 8 favorite colors?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would consider that a limited palette, but if it's 3 colors like he's asking about, it'd probably be Payne's Gray. Well, actually, you could do some nice monochromatic painting with Payne's Gray and sepia. You know, the collaboration video I did with Angel Fair, I actually did a bird painting with that. Those are 2, I've always considered those 2 essential colors because you can use Payne's Gray to cool other colors, and the sepia is good to mix with warm colors. That's kind of getting into a different topic.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, I guess it would depend. If I were limited to 3, I would probably pick like maybe ultramarine blue, maybe a like a red iron oxide. So you have that blue, that warm.
Now you got purple if you need it.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know, I guess it depends. If it were summer, maybe a green. If it were winter, you know, maybe a yellow, or I'm not sure. It would just depend on where I'm going, what I'm painting.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you got the blue and the yellow, then you got the green. You can get that out of that.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, if I had to limit it to 3 colors, I would take primary colors because I could, you know, I could basically do a color wheel with that. But it depends. It's so individual.
Yeah, I think I would take primary, but dark primaries.
Dark primaries, yeah.
Like either ultramarine blue or a Payne's Gray.
That's some next level stuff right there. See, people, you just got free next level stuff right there. Because seriously, I mean, you know, that's because you're talking about where your palette leans or where you want it to, depending on what you're going after. So one of the things I might say to MD, and he's been doing this, he's been like a designer for 30 years or something. It's like what I do when I go in the field is I just take a boatload of paint. It fits in here, and then I don't have to worry about it.
Yes.
I've never limited, you know, if I want to limit my palette, I just go with the 3 colors in there. But
Yeah.
if I change my mind, it's always that option. So Steve, we should probably wrap, but if you have 1 or 2 last questions you guys want to throw in there, let's see, Val will help us out here. If you haven't done so yet, please go over to Val's channel, Drawing with Fire, and subscribe to her channel. It's her birthday today, and on her birthday, you know, it was like I found this out, Steve. It's like, Val, you don't want to spend your birthday, you know, moderating chat with Steve and I, do you? And she said no. She was happy to do it. Which, not only is she a good sport and a sweetheart of a lady, but it's her birthday, and I feel exceptionally blessed that she's sharing it with us tonight. So.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Val. Happy birthday. And yeah, y'all go over there for sure and give her some subs, and you'll see some beautiful pyrography in the process. So
yes,
you know,
drop a little love on the channel, leave her a comment. I know she loves to see comments. So although I'm more or less a stalker, I just go and binge watch, you know. I hardly ever comment, and I should. I'm selfish, Steve. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm gonna have to light a candle at church for that. But, yeah, it's been great, Steve. There's maybe 1 or 2 questions. Let's see. Nope, I think we're good. We covered a lot. Oh, can you use acrylics the same way you use watercolor? And I only saw it because the person's name's Marty. So, hey, Marty, it's Marty. Can you use acrylics the same way you use?
Yes, yes, you can. You can thin them, use them in a wash style, layer them so they look very transparent. And when you do that, they do look very much like watercolor. You can do wet and wet. You know, of course, the differences are they dry permanently, so you can't re-wet them on the paper afterwards. You can even mix watercolor with acrylic, but you want to be careful. You don't want to get acrylic in your watercolors. So what I would do if you're going to try to mix watercolor with your acrylics is I would add from the tube watercolors to your acrylic palette and put them in a place where you know they're there. Don't put acrylics over with your watercolors, because you'll start mixing acrylic in your watercolor and you won't know or remember where you did that.
Right. Yeah.
But usually when you're done with an acrylic painting, you know, all that dries and you're done with it anyway. So add the watercolor to your acrylic palette, not vice versa. And I always get comments about the binding issue. You can't thin out acrylics too much or they don't bind. That's not true with watercolor paper. Look it up. With watercolor paper, you don't need to worry about the binding issue. So you can thin it with water to your heart's content. If you use it on paper, you don't have an issue with binding of the acrylics. That's only true. On surfaces like canvas or board, but not on watercolor paper.
All right. Well, let me give a quick shout out or two. Steve, Essie Tangle is in the house. Eve Bolt, she's a great, she's always commenting on my channel. I love talking to Eve. She's another Montreal gal, and sometimes we go back and forth in French. I do sometimes cheat and use Google Translate, but at one time I could read and speak a little French. And then just a bunch of people that I think are your regular subscribers. Oh, Annie Tracy's out there, and she's in the house. Sue, Linda Logan. Let's see who else. I think a lot of these folks are just people that subscribe to our channels and just they're here to support us, and hopefully they enjoyed themselves tonight. I have a great time with you. Somebody wants us to make this a regular thing. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell by how long we've gone.
Yeah.
It's like we could just keep going and going and going. But yeah, it's been a blast. It really has been a blast.
Well, maybe Steve and I will think about doing something more regularly with the group. I always feel like I'm getting the benefit of your massive fan base. But if you're willing to have me along for the ride, I always appreciate it, brother.
I always am. I love your knowledge of the art supplies out there, and you know, it's just fun to talk about. So I already got an idea. We talk about it. I already got an idea for the next one. So
you do? Okay. Well,
I do.
are we going to keep people in suspense? Right?
Yes, we're going to keep them in suspense.
I like it. A little cliffhanger there. I want to thank Val again. She did a great job moderating the chat. She's got everybody on point with questions and stuff like that. And there's so many good questions tonight. And there's so much to talk about and so much to cover. But I think one of the important things I'll take away from tonight, Steve, is just like, you know, like people talking about, you know, how stressful their lives are and how busy and complicated things can get. And just let yourself go and let yourself be free and draw and paint and do the things you love with art, because life is short, man. You got to do it.
Well said. Well said. Go out and have fun with it. Just have fun with it. Yep.
Don't forget to check out, you're here because you're at Mind to Watercolor, but go ahead and don't forget to check out all of Steve's videos. I was telling Steve
or Marty Owings' channel. Don't forget to check him out. If you're not subscribed to Marty, you need to be.
Well, when we were talking a little earlier tonight, I was telling Steve that I think I've leveled up at least 2 levels just from watching Steve's videos, and I know it will have the same effect on you if you just watch his stuff. And sometimes I just binge watch the old videos, because remember, Steve, back in the days when we started out, and it was like we kind of had a monotone routine, and it was a little less polished, I guess you could call it.
Yes,
but those are good old days too. So, but I learned a lot from you in those early days, and I do every time I watch your stuff. So thanks again for having me over, and we'll do it again soon.
You're quite welcome. Always enjoy it. Thank you, my friend. And I guess we will call that a night. And glad all of you could tune in. And Marty, until next time, see you, my friend. See everybody out there on the next video.
So long, Steve. Good night.
Bye-bye.